Virtual reality, immersive electronic environments. They're not just for kids' games or for grandpa crashing into the television set. A survey by the Government Accountability Office shows that most federal agencies are using immersive technologies for a variety of purposes. For the hows and whys, we turn to the GAO's Director of Science and Technology Assessment, Brian Bothwell. Brian, good to have you back.
Nice to see you, Tom.
What were you looking at here? This was not really an audit, but so much as a kind of what's going on here type of look?
Yeah, we were asked to look at how are the civilian agencies in the federal government using immersive technologies. So we sent out a survey to the agencies, and they told us about a lot of different uses that they have, both currently and their plans to do research and development on some future uses also.
Well, let's define the term here real briefly. Immersive, well, I call it electronic environment. That is to say, you can be in a submarine. That's an immersive environment, but it's real. This is where you wear funny-looking goggles and you're in the view that provides.
Yeah, there's an umbrella term for some of it. So there's augmented reality, mixed reality, virtual reality, sometimes all lumped together and called extended reality. And that can range from augmented reality can be using an app on your phone to say, how does this couch look in my living room? That's a piece of augmented reality. Up to virtual reality where you're putting on some goggles and you're blocking out everything in the environment around you and you're in this virtual world. There's a couple other immersive technologies out there also. One is simulators. That's been out there for a long time, things like flight simulators. And there are also immersive caves, which are walls and ceiling around you that you walk into. It gives you this 3D representation of various things, depending on what the program is running in the cave.
Almost like a tiny planetarium, if you will.
It is kind of like that. I went to the National Renewable Energy Laboratory near Denver last year, and they have one of those caves out there, and we walked through some very interesting examples and you can actually walk around in the cave itself and see different aspects of this three-dimensional simulation.
And did you find that agencies are using all of these various forms you've just described?
They are. There's a really good mix across many of the different agencies of different devices they're using and different devices they plan to use in the future.
And this was a look at just the civilian agencies, correct? Not DOD?
That's correct. We did not look at the Department of Defense.
Well, give us some examples. You mentioned the Energy Department because they have a wide range of research going on. What are they doing there, for example?
We visited NREL. We saw them looking at simulations of power flow on a grid with various components of the power generation, renewables, and others, and just see how different situations would affect the power flow on a grid. We also walked through a simulated wind energy field and showed how the atmosphere on the wind turbines would change. You would have just wind coming into the first set of turbines, but there's another row of turbines behind them and behind them. And there's a lot of interesting things that go on with the airflow. Those are just a couple different examples that we saw there. Many other things are going on around the agencies. Homeland Security told us they've trained about 10,000 employees in various law enforcement techniques using immersive technologies. NASA has used virtual reality demonstrations of emerging technologies at public events for public outreach. The Department of Transportation is looking at superimposing data on a pilot's view out the windows, sort of a heads-up display type of thing. Another example is the Veterans Health Administration. They're looking at the use of immersive technologies for medical treatment, for mental health, physical rehab, and pain management, and they're doing some research into how they can use those technologies to aid stroke survivors in recovery.
Yeah, so it really is a wide range of mission-connected things. It's not just fun and games.
Right. There's a lot of different uses, and we kind of categorize those in our report as education and training, healthcare, design and construction is being used for that too. Data visualization is a big one. There are several others.
We're speaking with Brian Bothwell. He's Director of Science and Technology Assessment at the Government Accountability Office. And did agencies say that they're getting the hoped-for benefits from this technology?
Yes, we got a lot of reports about the benefits. It was better data sharing. Sometimes there were reduced costs because you do remote collaboration as opposed to having to collaborate in place. You save a lot of money that way if you can do that. They had a lot of good benefits. They also had some challenges that they told us about. Like with anything you have in a network, there are cybersecurity and privacy requirements that you have to meet, and that can sometimes be an issue. There's also high costs, purchasing, operating, and maintaining the equipment. And there's rapid tech development going on also. So these things are becoming outdated very quickly. So that really adds to the cost.
Did you come across any of those Apple devices that have got to be the most expensive headsets. Maybe only DoD can buy those.
Actually, in the site visits that I went to, I did not come across the Apple headsets, but I did see one of the Microsoft headsets. And that was very interesting to see the headset use after being in the immersive cave, because it felt much, much more limited because you had such a limited field of view. But of course, the caves are very expensive compared to headsets.
Sure, and headsets, I guess, well, I mentioned at the top, people have accidents physically when they're wearing them because they forget that they're actually standing near a wall and they go after something and you can hurt yourself.
We heard that from a couple of agencies, too, about the downsides is that the disorientation potentially or falling, being injured while you're totally immersed in this other environment is an issue they brought up.
And the latency, I guess, has been driven out of a lot of these systems so that the issues of seasickness, nausea are maybe less than they were years ago.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting counter to that. I mean, the other side of that is there's a lot of dependency on the enabling tech to use this stuff. You need a lot of computing power behind it in order to make it work well.
All right, you made no recommendations, but what did this tell you at the macro level, this look-see?
We just did the most comprehensive review of what's going on in the federal civilian agencies of this use of immersive technology. We were able to get all the information from our survey and from follow-on conversations with the agencies and some of the site visits to put it all in one place. This is a very long report, not the length that we like to put out there, but it's full of great information. It has several appendices which talk about what is going on at the agencies who are using this in a lot of detail, and especially in a lot of detail if you look at the NASA appendix. So there's a lot of information out there that really lays out what is going on in the federal civilian agencies. Like I said, we didn't make any recommendations, but personally, I was really surprised that there was so much happening in the agencies and so much more planned to happen.
Yeah, your report is 180 pages, which is kind of long for GAO, but luckily you can link and it'll jump right to the department or agency you might be interested in.
I think the main part's about 30 pages long, but there's, like I said, we've got tons of good information in those appendices, and so the public and our congressional clients can, jump around in there and see exactly what they want to see, which topics, which agencies.
And since there was no major program or fraudulent activity or out-of-control procurement involved, what do you think the congressional sponsors were seeking in this particular request?
I think they wanted to know what's being done, what advantages there are, what obstacles may be in the way that are preventing agencies from actually proceeding with some of these.
Got it. But in general, the agencies found it beneficial.
Yes, mostly they found it beneficial. Like I said, there were some downsides. We found that of the 23 civilian agencies, 17 were using immersive technology in some way. 15 of them plan to adopt or expand their use of that. But, 1/3 of the agencies, approximately, 8 of them said they didn't think it was likely or they weren't sure about further adoption or expansion because of those difficulties I talked about before, the cost and the cybersecurity.
All right, so some ground to cover yet. Brian Bothwell is Director of Science and Technology Assessment at the Government Accountability Office. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Tom.
And we'll post this interview along with a link to his report at federalnewsnetwork.com/Federal Drive. Immerse yourself in the Federal Drive. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.